Los Angeles, 1937. There are lots of guys like J.J. Gittes. They're easy to find, if you want to find them.
Mr. Gittes, have we ever met?
Well, no.
Never?
Never.
Since you agree with me that we've never met before, you must also agree with me that I've never hired you to do anything, certainly not spy on my husband. I don't get tough with anyone, Mr. Gittes. My lawyer does.
You do your job. And sometimes you find the answers to questions that should never be asked. Or you find out what happens to people who ask them.
Hold it there, kitty cat. You're a very nosy fellow, kitty cat, huh? You know what happens to nosy fellows?
I dislike the word cheat.
Did you have affairs?
Mr. Gittes.
Did he know about it? Where were you when your husband died? You were seeing someone too. For very long?
I don't see anyone for very long, Mr. Gittes. It's difficult for me.
Mr. Gittes, you're dealing with a disturbed woman who's just lost her husband. I don't want to take him advantage of.
The truth. I said I want the truth!
Jake. I'm doing you a favor. Come on, Jake.
Forget it, Jake. It's Chinatown.
You get tough. You get tender. You get close to each other. Maybe you even get close to the truth. Jack Nicholson and Faye Dunaway in a Robert Evans production of a Roman Polanski film, Chinatown.
Greetings and welcome to the 8th Movie Night Extravaganza takeover of the This Is Revolution podcast. My name is Forrest Miller, host of Movie Night Extravaganza. Tonight, I am really excited to say that we are kicking off Movie Noir Extravaganza, a celebration of all things noir and neo-noir that's going to take place over the course of May on Movie Night Extravaganza. Tonight's film is Roman Polanski's Chinatown, the 1974 neo-noir starring Jack Nicholson and Faye Dunaway, that's based around the LA Water Wars. The antagonist is played by John Huston, who directed The Maltese Falcon. Hopefully this will serve as an introduction to Movie Noir Extravaganza and explore some of the elements we want to survey this month. Now, before I bring in my panelists for the evening, I'd like to remind you to like and subscribe to both This Is Revolution and my channel, Movie Night Extravaganza. You can also support Movie Night Extravaganza on Patreon, where you get access to all kinds of amazing discussions and interviews. Links are in the description. So without further ado, let's bring in the crew. Starting with Conan Neutron, host of Protonic Reversal, and Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends is a band that Jason also plays in sometimes. And, Movie Night Extravaganza, too. How's it going?
Your show. Yes, absolutely. It's going great. I'm very excited to talk about this. This is one of my favorite movies, period. I feel like I say that every time we host one of these because we tend to choose movies that are my favorite movies, but there's worse things to do than talk about your favorite movies, right?
Yeah.
Of course, I'm going to get this out of the way. Directed by no one. Nobody directed this movie. Just keep moving, kid.
Cancellation already.
Canceled already. I'm very excited that we have a whole, as you mentioned, Forrest, we have a whole month of noir movies coming up, and we're actually doing it sequentially. We're starting from early on and then moving into the neo-noir and all that. And I'm super excited that we got to fit in Chinatown because I think this is going to be a great conversation because this is a legit great movie for a number of reasons. So glad to be here.
Directed by Redacted.
Directed by Redacted. Exactly. We'll just go with that.
Of course, I'm also bringing on J. Andrew World, my other co-host on Movie Night Extravaganza, and illustrator, works on Give Them an Argument. You've seen his work on Michael Brooks's book Against the Web, all over the place.
Anglo-pessimism.
Yeah, and Anglo-pessimism.
Yes.
The Jason and Pascal, right? It's
it's for the show.
Yeah,
for this show. So people.
No, the other this show.
the this show that has the larger viewership. Anyway,
but it's the shirt, right? It's I remember.
Yes,
it's more of a way of life, Forrest. Really? So.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So Movie Noir Extravaganza. So I can't remember who suggested this one. But I'm happy that we got to fit it in as a as a starter.
I remember it was me.
Go on.
Yeah. So I'm happy this is a starter. It obviously connects to Maltese Falcon because John Huston is in this and was the first time director actually of Maltese Falcon, as we talked about on Jay Hutch's show.
Wild.
Yeah. So he's in this as Noah Cross, who's like the deeply evil and incestuous small or large business owner / man about town, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, the protagonist of this movie, exactly. The nice guy, just trying to do his cool guy things. Exactly.
Conan, James Hong is the protagonist of this movie.
Wow, we all know that. Really.
All right. Well, we're arguing already about who the true protagonist of this movie is. That kind of opens up the Trump bit that I wanted to do, which is Trump.
Well, it makes sense because this is basically a merger and acquisition of our show, and This Is Revolution, which is not how it started. But yeah,
this is a coup. Yes. This is not a revolution.
This is more of we got ideas. We saw Battle of Ideas last month, and we got ideas exactly. Anyway, Forrest, please continue.
No, so the Trump bit that I was thinking about, which is that Trump thinks that Noah Cross, the Jack Hughes, the John Huston character. Jack Huston's his grandson. John Huston, I don't know why I wrote that down, but Jack Huston was the guy in Boardwalk Empire who half his face was covered by a mask, and that's John Huston's grandson. Both interesting looking actors, but so. Trump watching this and John Huston's character, Noah Cross, is the hero because he's the guy that's so in Trump's mind, this is the tragic story of a giant real estate deal that's just gone to shit because people keep poking around in it and municipal government keeps trying to get involved with the people owning their own water and power.
The true villain. Yeah, exactly.
Trump's sitting there and he's just watching it like, this movie is terrible. They had a great deal. Everybody would have made so much. It was really one of the best deals. And then, he comes through, Jake comes through, Private Eye, we don't like him. We don't like him. We like cops, but we don't like this one. We don't like this one, folks.
Ivanka, my child, would be hot. And
he also bangs his hot daughter. Bangs his hot daughter.
Yeah, spoiler alert for a movie made in 1974. But yeah, that rough. And all the more rough when you think about Redacted. But anyway, we're not thinking about Redacted. We're thinking about how great of a film this is.
I'm finally back to not being anxious with my I poked my eye with that bandage earlier, and it was really, really hard to read the whole page of intro.
Yeah. I appreciate that you were going to commit to the bit so much that you did yourself grievous bodily harm. That shows your dedication as a host and to this entire series, really.
What happens to a nosy streamer?
Exactly.
But yeah, I think this is a great movie to start with because I think that a lot of the tropes. I'm happy that we're doing this one, and I'm happy that on Friday we're doing Double Indemnity because I think all of the tropes that make noir, the way it is, are in both of those two movies, right?
It's all
this one kind of flips a lot of them on their heads. Do you guys have a favorite noir trope that you're interested in talking about this month?
I mean, I think that. What was that, Andy?
I was just going to say shadow and light, like just the contrast of that.
Yeah. The chiaroscuro, right? I probably just butchered that. But.
But that's actually atmosphere. That's like with fog and bringing in other stuff. I'm just talking about like the way they use shadow and light in a lot of them, like the way like in Maltese Falcon when they showed the the blinds through the
Yeah, the
center line,
Spade
you
and
could see
Archer
his name.
logo at the beginning of
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, just absolutely, all that kind of stuff is beautiful. That the chiaroscuro is more of the whenever you start talking like fog, coming in and out. I'd say probably the best use that I've seen most recently was in the Macbeth movie that one of the Coens did.
Oh, Tragedy Macbeth. Yeah. That was good.
And
Yeah,
they're big noir fans, much like this
Yeah.
is kind of the a quintessential kind of almost postmodernist neo-noir. I think that they've really taken that genre to the next level with some of their stuff. I mean, from Fargo to everything. I mean, we talked about Barton Fink. That's another one. Like all of these kind of movies that are kind of similarly placed. And I think this starts off an interesting conversation about what is noir, right? Like, is it an aesthetic that these movies have? Is it because the tropes are kind of disconnected.
Well, I can actually tie that into me answering the question that you asked both of us, which is that I actually like the whole trope of the failure of institutions, like the corruption of institutions and things along those lines. But here's the deal: I like it as a dramatic trope, as stories, not as like lifestyle choice. Which I think that's the difference between me and like I guess your average libertarian or whatever, but that's the only difference other than that. But no, I think that it's interesting to see how that has changed as awareness of that type of movie and that type of storytelling has changed too. Like as for instance, much later on this month we're going to be doing Brick, which I quite like, but it's sort of like what if noir but teenagers is basically but it's great, it's awesome. But yeah, the failure of institutions, and of course the great Eileen Jones, who's going to be on Friday talking about double identity, has written a couple like amazing articles about this. She's basically one of the noir queens, I would say, and I think it is a big deal. I think it's something where you need to be bought into that to enjoy it as theater, to enjoy it as entertainment. At least to be like, yo, this is allegory, not a documentary.
Yeah, and they played with those ideas a lot, I think, because I don't know if you've ever seen like Naked City. Like there are 8 million stories, and in New York City, and which, by the way, the population is still 8 million and something in New York, so it really hasn't grown. But 8 million stories in New York City, and this is one of them. And then they did that whole TV show based around the premise in the movie, the famous Ouija cinematography in that movie, kind of a half true documentary style. Right, but yeah. And I mean, storytelling in general plays a big role, right? Like they have the narration, whether it's Sunset Boulevard, or kind of doing it when he's already dead, which is like a weird thing you're hearing about it. Joseph Gillis from Beyond the Grave in that movie, or whether it's in Double Indemnity, like that kind of storytelling where he's kind of dictating into he's dictating into a what the fuck do you call it? Not a gramophone, but like some kind of recorder. An early there's a certain name for that. So he's dictating into that.
iPod, I don't know what. No,
sousaphone. Yeah, it's a sousaphone.
Yeah, exactly. He's definitely dictating to a sousaphone. But yeah, I mean, it's absolutely like, and the unreliable narrator, not just the narrator, but the narrator has some degree of telling different story, and like that's both celebrated and parodied many times over. Look at something like Sin City, right? Frank Miller, great artist, good writer for some classic stories. Kind of
dictaphone. That's what I was thinking.
There you go. Let the record show. Kind of an a-hole politically, and honestly, kind of has fallen off his game. But you can't. I mean, gamers get gamed. You have to love. You have to give it up for the classic work. But he referenced so much of it. It's just like, what if that, but superheroes, which I know is controversial since leftists aren't allowed to like superhero movies, but. Except for apparently the Batman, which I found dull. My bad, but. Cut that.
This is more, I think, of an after party. Let's not take it in this direction.
Yeah, absolutely. So
but yeah, I mean, I think I agree. I mean, Sin City is an interesting version of that too, because it's very stylistic, and I think that is another noir trope, right? Like the incredible, whether it's the chiaroscuro. I'm sure I'm butchering that word, but like that kind of atmospheric, that atmospheric stylism.
It's an Italian word.
I know. I don't know. Who do I know in fucking Italy? Don't bitch it to me. Yeah, I'm like Paulie Walnuts in fucking The Sopranos, who when they go to Italy and he only knows like that one
Can I
what's
get
the
you
word?
some spaghetti with red sauce?
With some gravy. Some gravy.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
he's a New Jersey original. But Andy, yeah, I want to hear from you about these these tropes, and I'm sure you're going to talk about the aesthetics and yeah.
Yeah, I mean the big thing is like just composition in noir films as far as visuals go has always been very important. That's why one of the movies which we're not covering that I was pushing for this month was Border Incident, because I think that's probably one of the best as far as visuals go.
Yeah, you've been pushing for that since the beginning of the show, which interestingly enough was another noir film that we started out with.
Yeah, no, it's one we haven't done yet, and at some point we will. But like that one kind of is an interesting movie because it came out in 1949, the height of noir, and it's set in the desert. So like it's in big open places, but yet it feels claustrophobic, but with the use of shadows and whatnot. So it's kind of brilliant in that way, using the visual language of noir to pull that off. It doesn't have the chiaroscuro that you're talking about, because I think that's more in a lot of the cities where they got the smoke coming in, and as the hero comes in and out of like smoke from in his trench coat, which is also just amazing to always see. And that artists like Will Eisner, who was doing it before Frank Miller, who that's actually who Frank Miller was aping a lot of it from. Besides being influenced by the other writers, Hammett and
Dashiell Hammett, and I think he was also really inspired, I mean, politically too, I'm sure, by Mickey Spillane, right? Like
absolutely, he did. I'm embarrassed that I had this in college, but I had a Mickey Spillane poster that Frank Miller did with a giant Nazi symbol on it up in my wall in college.
This is my my noir look.
Good.
I was going for. I wish I had better sunglasses for it though. These are like modernist sunglasses, and
yeah. You look like you're going to like the beach to rape somebody.
Much like Roman never mind.
Almost at the name.
Mark the time, 19 minutes, 56 seconds. No. But the thing about Chinatown that I like is it is both a noir and it transcends a genre at the same time. It's just an incredible movie. And it's one that I've seen plenty of times and still manages to surprise me in like really unique and interesting ways. Like there's things that just hit they just hit a little different when you watch it at different moments of your life, right? And like it's part of it has to do with like it's like a cast that's like at the peak of their power. It's a director, redacted, who's pretty darn good at directing the movies. Like it's just it's the right movie at the right time, and it happens to just be freaking awesome. Like it's undeniably awesome as far as if you're watching a movie and thinking about it in terms of good faith, like it's hard to deny that this is a good movie.
Yeah,
and like
you never realize though, it's also it's always the directors that are like extremely talented that end up being like just awful pieces of shit, like
just total creeps. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's another show, but it's a shame. But like I still love Rosemary's Baby too. Like that's still a great film. Like it's not gonna be but whatever. But Chinatown, what I love about Chinatown is it shows like this really interesting story that at the end of it, like you have a better idea of what's happening, but the whole time you're kind of like, well, it's reasonable to think it could be this or it could be that, it could be this one, like this one's doing this, who's the bad they're the bad person, no, they're the bad person, and that's
and then at the end, you're like, you know what? They're all pretty fucking. They're all pretty fucking.
All kind of bad, yeah.
It's the It's Always Sunny realization where you're like, I am watching a movie about fucking awful pieces of shit people. But
yeah, the realization. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think that it's interesting though that they take another trope, which is that like Humphrey Bogart's private detective characters, right? That they're like kind of not lampooning, but like kind of lampooning, like with Jake and like how like how corrupt everything is around him. Like they're maybe lampooning isn't the right word, but like almost satirizing because everything's kind of up to a 10, right? Like in this movie, like they can do that because there's no more Hays Code. So I think it's kind of fascinating that you always kind of expect that person's going to be kind of a son of a bitch. And at the last minute, Humphrey Bogart in every single movie, whether he's Sam Spade or Philip Marlowe or any of these characters, right, would pull out at the last minute and be like, oh no, I was playing everyone. I'm actually like a good guy with a moral compass. And everybody thought I was a criminal, but I'm not a criminal. And at the end of this, you're kind of left with the same feeling I'd say about Jake. And I mean, in some like, I don't think he's like a great guy, but I'm saying like, you know, he doesn't extort anybody. Like, you know, he makes it clear that he does have that moral compass.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and like, there's a lot in this movie that shows that morality can be conditional or misplaced. I mean, and look at, what's the what's the line? Are you alone? Isn't everybody? I mean, God.
Yeah,
that says it all right there, right? I mean,
he's a horny motherfucker, but you know, not in the. I don't know.
Yeah, he really wants to tell that joke.
He does really want to tell.
There's a Chinaman. I like the way that he puts the emphasis on that in that joke where he's like, no, listen to the story for a second. There's this Chinaman.
Yeah.
Really the punchline to that joke. And just the joke is barber just like, I don't know. I found that pretty funny that he goes to the barber shop and the guy's calming him down, telling him that joke. And then he goes right back to his office and he's like, I just heard the best joke. My barber, that guy's crazy.
But I also think it's amazing that like when you kind of unpeel the onion of like what's going on, all these horrible things, like, you know, this familial trauma and just like horrific, like rich people getting away with the worst things possible kind of deal. Like it's also just based about getting money, right? Getting money just because like acquisition of like money and power is what these people do. And like they continue to do it as a self-fulfilling prophecy that is in state in and of itself. And man, 74, right? 74, 76, what was it? Like, you know, I wasn't alive yet. I know that much. And that's not just subversive, that's like important to have a movie like that. This is well regarded, like putting that out there. And it's weird to think about that now because of course we like think that like, oh yeah, like, you know, maybe Elon Musk isn't the greatest guy, you know, of course we think that.
What are you talking about?
But there was a time, no, I mean, we need to address this, and we need to address it like full on in an earnest manner, which is that wasn't always the case. This is the 70s, right? I mean, like, because think about the fact that, you know, you had like the sort of the fall of like the 1950s, like rah, America's great as long as you're like a straight white person who lives in the suburbs.
Who isn't a communist.
Right, exactly. But beyond that, you had like things like, you know, Last Picture Show, right? The Bogdanovich was showing like, you know, his version of like what that was, but like more like what it actually was, and like, you know, the lonely desolation and sort of like lack of opportunity and the soft tyranny of diminished expectations. So you have that whole like new wave of cinema that are like showing things in a new way. And one of the things that director redacted, you know what, let's just credit Robert Towne because it's one of the best scripts of all time. So we'll credit Robert Towne because he actually wrote it, and
he wrote it for his old roommate Jack Nicholson.
Right.
Who really wanted to tell a joke to him about
but like managed to write like one of the best critiques of like unchecked capitalism that has ever been like in a very successful film for at least for that decade, if not ever, and does so in a way without being preachy about it, and manages to tell a good story as well. So
and the whole story about those dams in LA at that time is just fascinating.
Yeah,
like how the
story, and a book had come out. A book had come out that inspired him. He had read a book about the LA water wars, and he was like, "Wow, we could make a whole like, you know, a noir movie about this like water and power." And I was kind of, I mean, I have a clip for not now, but like the after party of him talking about how he got the idea, and like a lot of his idea because he wanted to make a movie with Jack Nicholson. That's his buddy. They lived together. They hung out. He was in Jack Nicholson's directorial debut before that. He was hanging out with him when he wasn't a famous actor yet, when he was just
he was reading the drafts of Head.
so he, you know, he writes about that, and then the last minute he reads this book about the LA water wars on top of also reading an article about Raymond Chandler, and he put those two things together.
He just smooshed them together like a big s'more. But like we talked about it on the Mad Max Fury Road episode, right? That like, I mean, like even in contemporary California, like the whole water war thing is absolutely still a thing. But like the whole thing of like, you know, when he's expanding the motivation, it's like, oh, just bring the city to the valley. Like I forget the exact quote, but like that's an incredible and that's sort of like that shows you the scope and scale, what like how people like that think, right? That actually sculpt and change society based on their whims and desires, and how actual
you either bring the water, to LA or you bring LA to the water. And he says, how are you going to do that? By incorporating the valley into the city, which is the real. It's
actually happened. which is crazy because it's like you don't get those kinds of stories, never get told. You always hear about the brave pioneers that, you know, blah blah blah, and then they ate each other in the snow over the winter, but you don't hear about those kinds of folks, because just like, you know, Karl Rove type, you know, like they don't want to be the story, they just want to get the money.
And it's fascinating when he confronts Noah Cross at the end. And he's like, how much are you worth? And he's like, I honestly have no idea. And he's like, 10 million. And he's like, oh my, yes. And he's like, and that line really stuck out to me where he says, hold on. He says, well, because I want to get it perfectly right. Otherwise it's not worth even bringing up. But at one point when he's confronting him, he says, what more? Well, I'll try to paraphrase it, I guess. Why are you doing it? What else can you buy that you can't already afford? And that's kind of the thing that everyone really wants to grab a rich person, whether it's Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, like these people that make billions and billions.
Why isn't it enough? Why isn't it enough? How much do you need? That's the goal. The acquisition of wealth becomes the goal. It you know, they can gamify it, they can like try to like coach it in other terms, but like it's what they're doing. It's what they do. And we celebrate it. We don't just allow it. We celebrate it. I mean, not this show specifically, but culturally. Like
this show always celebrating billionaires.
Yeah,
we're always. But the thing is, though, we're going to give them all a close shave. With a guillotine. Exactly. Yeah.
But no, that line he responds with.
I appreciate the clarification, Andy. It's going to be with a guillotine, just to be clear. Thank you.
Yeah.
The line that he
back, you might not know.
Yeah.
The line that he ends it with, though. That reminds me of in Sweeney Todd. There's the lyric that's like how gratifying for once to know that those above will serve those down below, and they're talking about literally serving them as in like, you know, to eat. They're eating them. But so he says the future, Mr. Gittes, the future. And that's kind of just fascinating, right? Like, because megalomania is one thing where it's like, you know, I want to keep buying. You know what I mean? And I want to keep selling. I'm doing all of these trades. But like, also there's this desire to put yourself in the history books. Maybe not at the front of everything where you're like, hey, I'm the big, you know, LA mayor or whatever, but like in a way that, you know, truly cements your legacy into something. And it feels like that's what he's trying to do. I mean, he's going to make a shitload of money too, but you know, like it feels like almost like he's privatizing. And then with California, you know, all of these things start out in California. I feel like a lot of times, like, you know, the desire to privatize all of these municipal services, you know, with the LA water wars kind of fighting over it. And this is like during FDR's presidency where they kind of are creating a lot of different public utilities, like public power, public, you know, for like, you know, the dams everywhere. Like they're doing these huge infrastructure projects because they're trying to get everybody out of the depression. And that's a good way to keep people employed in a way that, you know, makes society more productive. But before that, you know, if there was a railroad line coming to your town, if there was infrastructure in your town, it was a company paying for it because they wanted to transport goods from point A to point B, right? Like you had to rely on that rather than relying all the time on the state. And, so it's kind of fascinating that this kind of ends up being a conversation in this movie at a time when I think more than anything else, you know, in the post-Nixon era, things started getting privatized more and more, right? Like you're kind of speeding up to a Reagan presidency.
And it wasn't like some crazy, insane concept. It was like, well, you know, we've tried this and it works, and here's all the reasons why we feel it's better. And also look at that over there. You know, it's sort of we only need just enough because people are treating it like a valid idea because it's still a relatively new idea, and it's the benefits have been sold while there hasn't been time to see what the after effects are to the community, to the culture, to the institutions themselves,
and to the bank accounts, which we never, you know, we don't talk enough about the bank accounts. But like
Exactly.
the central premise of this is that old school style corruption where they're, you know, taking all the names of the
Right.
elderly retired people, and you know, you're working with a retirement home, a retirement community, and you know, you take the names and then you buy up property in the names of those people that are sitting in the home, and then like I don't know, I found that kind of
I had
fascinating.
kind of forgotten about that piece of it. Like when I rewatched it, I was like, oh yeah, they like kind of like just using these old folks' names to sort of get this land deal through that, like, and still like have it be like legal. You know, is it ethical? Hell no. Is it legal? They probably don't have a law against it yet at the time that this movie is being made. But like, yeah, like that just shows you like the level and the depths of like what style of a conspiracy it is. And like I think I got more of it now as an adult than I ever did when I saw it as a kid. Where it's like, oh, that's nefarious, and that's probably, you know, that's probably how it actually went down, and that's, you know, nobody needed to make some mythological idea about how to do it. So
Yeah, but I mean, it is fascinating whenever somebody also just reads a book and they're like, hey, maybe this would make a good screenplay, right? Like, it's not like he's reading a book on the LA water wars, because you know what, like how often do you read a book?
I just read this book called Dianetics. You guys heard of it? No kidding.
Oh, dude, Leslie Lee had a really funny tweet earlier about the
I don't want this channel or our channel
Roe
to
versus
be
Wade
taken
thing,
down.
and he said, and he was like, imagine if 6 Supreme Court justices overturned psychotherapy. You know what I mean? Like that was his, yeah. But
no, I like that. That's some lateral thinking. That's strategic. I like that.
But yeah, I mean, so there's this kind of megalomaniac character, and at the same time, though, I think it's kind of a living symbol of noir, right? Like I think at that point, John Huston was kind of the quintessential noir director, right? Like every Humphrey Bogart movie kind of starred him. Like I mean, it had him as director, right? And he's also an actor. Like he's been in a crazy amount of different things, and he's one of the rare people that was able to kind of do that, right? Like he was one of the rare actor directors. I don't think that who started out as a director and then moved to acting. Like I don't think that that's something that was that common at the time.
I'm looking forward to Quentin Tarantino's acting career taking off in a few years.
Well, so this movie also is redacted, playing the role, and I think the one bad performance in this movie is his forced American accent. He's like, "Come on, kitty cat," and then he drops it. He drops it 30 seconds into it, and then he's like, "The goldfish from the bowl."
I gotta say though, the one thing about the second time he shows up and Jack Nicholson jumps on the car, you know, and rides off on the side. It's always been my dream to ride a car like that. I know, like as a child, I had 2 dreams. One of them was to always enter and exit a car like the General Lee on Dukes of Hazzard.
The Dukes of Hazzard, yeah, of course.
Yeah. Which you know, I've actually sat in the actual General Lee. I have pictures on Facebook, which you know. It was pretty awesome. And the other thing was to ride on a car with a gangster like that, you know, like
I've
stood
up in the back of someone's car with the sunroof down, or like not the sunroof, but like, you know, a convertible. And
I've hung out the window with a video camera once, but like, you know, that's not quite the same.
Yeah, but like that getaway, the jumping on like with the
it has to be when you're getting away from somebody too. I don't like it, just doing it, isn't it?
That's what makes it rad. That's a getaway where there's literally, by the way, not many bullets flying until they're outside, but once they're outside and driving away, it's like like dodging gunfire on like the sidewall. What do they call it? The thing that he's standing on?
Floor runners, I think.
Yeah, well, whatever. Well, you're standing on it and you're dodging gunfire. That's quintessential noir for sure. And also cool as hell.
One thing I just realized having this conversation that I hadn't thought of yet, throughout this movie, right? Everybody's shooting at everybody else, and the bullets never hit anybody until, you know, that final scene where they really do, and they go right through her eye. Like nobody ever really gets shot in this movie. Like, you know, they shoot at the car, they shoot at them as they're running away. The dumb Okies, you know, shoot it, you know, blow up Jack Nicholson's car, like it crashes into the tree and stuff.
But they're from like the GI Joe school or like Stormtrooper school of just like, hey, choo choo choo, and like nobody comes like exactly.
So the one bullet that really lands is the one that, you know, ends the movie with her you know, accident. Well, I don't even know if it's accidental. Like it seems like they're doing warning shots, and then the one guy aims towards the car and actually hits her, and like it's almost like
he was aiming for the tires though, so you know, just to show you it's not safe to fire a gun.
Yeah.
Well, totally, but also think about the fact that when it's supposed to be taking place, right? Like there's certain things that we think of that are known culturally, right? Like, hey, if somebody's driving away in a car, shoot the tires. But what I like is that when this,
would you say that that's a known, and then there are also known unknowns?
exactly, like our buddy Don Rumsfeld, friend of the show. But you know, this is again one of the reasons why noir works at the time period that it takes place, not the time it was made, but the time period that it takes place is that wasn't something that was known from folks. You know, like, and that's it's perfectly reasonable to have just like shoot the guy. He's getting away. You know, maybe try to get him.
Yeah. Hey, maybe you could hit the guy.
Maybe you could try hit him next time. I don't know. It's call me crazy, but
well, that kind of also goes back to like duels, right? People would duel each other, but they wouldn't actually aim at each other. You know, there's the Hamilton thing where you know, it was expecting that he would that Aaron Burr would aim at the sky and aimed right at him because he was like, no, I'm gonna fucking kill Hamilton.
That's how gentlemen dueled. Yes.
Yeah, so it's like that's how gentlemen shoot out a tire. You know what I mean? Like, no. So I want to introduce.
So there's a lot of gentlemen in Star Wars apparently because those stormtroopers can't hit the broadside of a barn. But anyway, yeah, go ahead.
No, they just kind of got inbred through the whole cloning process, I think. But
gentlemen stormtroopers, yes.
May the 4th be with you. By the way.
I was gonna keep throwing references out until somebody said it, but yeah.
Yeah. So
glad we got
I wanted to introduce
gentlemen.
Wanted to introduce
the classic bit. It's good.
Another trope, which is that, you know, the I guess his name is I don't want to say Pablo Escobar. That's not what his fucking name is, but his name is Escobar.
It's definitely not Pablo Escobar.
No, but so Escobar. I don't think I wrote down his first name, but
I don't think we know his first name. Like, I don't think they reveal it in the movie.
Yeah, no, they do. I think they do.
Maybe once, but I think it's just Escobar most of the time. So
yeah,
it could be Pablo.
So his ex partner, right, is the cop that's chasing him. There's two cops really that are trying to solve the you know, that are trying to solve this crime. Oh, Lou Escobar. He does say Lou a bunch of times. Pablo's less famous brother, I guess.
I was gonna say it shows how much anybody cared because none of us retained that information, and I've seen this movie a lot. Like, so the trope is really usually that there's two different, and this happens in Maltese Falcon. I mean, most famously, I think, right? It's his ex-partner and it's another cop who's like, you know, this is like the by the books, you know, law abiding, you know, although it's corrupt. And I noticed that this is something now that Chinese cinema is doing where they don't really want to say that the government is corrupt necessarily, right? Because it can't get by censorship, but they can kind of say that like the cops are corrupt, right? Like it's kind of an old noir trope. And so usually the cop that's his ex-partner is kind of on his side, and that's the one that's not chasing him as rabidly. And, you know, with Sam Spade, like it's his ex-partner, and then he's friends with the one, and the other one's like, oh, I'll give you a fair trial. In this case, that role is reversed, and Lou Escobar is like determined to fucking nail him to the wall. And you have to wonder if it's whatever happens in Chinatown, where he let somebody die, and you know what I mean, like, or whether it's just that he's a pesky detective, or whether it's that, you know, they don't really make his motivations that clear, but he's kind of decided by the end of it completely that, like, you know, he's going to take Jake down with him, or not with him because he's not going to get it, but like he's going to take Jake down with everybody else involved in this.
And if we ever watch The Two Jakes, maybe we'd actually know the answer to some of these questions.
Nah. Don't get ahead
There's
of
a sequel to this movie. For those of you who don't know, it's called The Two Jakes. Came out in 1990.
It was supposed to be a trilogy, and each one was supposed to be the amount of time that they waited between the two of them. Well, we'll talk about that in the after party, though, because I do have a clip where they explain.
Yeah, I mean, we're really gonna waste valuable showtime talking about The Two Jakes. It's no Chinatown. Let's put it that
way.
We
only have 20. We only have 20
worth
more
mentioning
minutes.
that it exists. That's all. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Asked and answered.
I think that yeah, so I think that's kind of fascinating, right? I think that this movie takes a lot of those tropes, and clearly lovingly so. I think Robert Towne is, you know, I mean, he does base it off of the Raymond Chandler thing, who funny enough, Raymond Chandler I think helped write Double Indemnity, which is an interesting you know, thing to put into this conversation, but because that's our next movie.
And was on Friends in the 90s.
To the people that are watching this, so it's interesting that they flip that around, because you have to believe that it's it's purposely done, and to kind of subvert your expectations, I guess, and to differentiate itself, I think, from that era of noir. And the corruption can be in the 70s, which the corruption is able to be a lot more explicit, because it's well,
100%. I mean,
I trailed off. The Hays Code is no longer in effect. It's allowed to be a lot more explicit, and of course, in 1974, corruption is the charge of the day.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And the guy who played Escobar, his name is Perry Lopez, by the way. He's also in Creature of the Black Lagoon, and of course, in the aforementioned Two Jakes as well. I think he's also in like a Death Wish. He's in like he was like a bunch of stuff. Yeah, Death Wish 4. I was right. But yeah, like it's interesting too that like the only real racial lines that are explicitly brought up is, of course, the Chinese community. And of course, can we give a shout out for James Hong, who's finally getting his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and
just deservedly so.
About goddamn time. He's been in 100,000 movies, and like most of them.
And he's phenomenal in every single like role that he has, whether it's like small or big. He's just he's incredible.
I'm a James Hong fan, and I vote. That's what.
Goddamn right.
Yeah, and in this, he's kind of he has a very mellowed out performance. Obviously, like he just kind of answers the door, but I mean, it is kind of still a crucial part, and he's one of those classic that guys. After we talked about which I knew who he was, but like you look at him and you're like, oh yeah, he's been in all of this other stuff.
Yeah, that dude.
Blade Runner, Big Trouble in Little China.
Apparently, 650, I think, was what they said that.
Genghis Khan Conquers the Moon.
Yeah, Genghis. I've never actually heard that fucking title.
Dean Stockwell was up there, but like, that's he's got to be one of the all-timers for like number of credits, and also with number of like timelessly like good credits, right?
And the fact that he's still working today. I mean, he's got like 4 or 5 things.
He's in Everything Everywhere all at once, which is astounding, and like maybe the movie of the year. And everyone
have you seen the sweetest pictures of him and Jamie Lee Curtis from that film? Like just them hanging out. Him and Jamie Lee Curtis.
No.
No. Between takes, they were just hanging out and having fun together, and it was just like the best.
Frodo, James Hong is not only still alive, as I mentioned, he's getting his star finally at the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and he was in one of the best movies of this year, which is Everything Everywhere All at Once, and everyone should watch that. Turn this off and watch that. Thank you.
So this kind of segues us to the last, I think, trope that I wanted to talk about in this movie, and that's kind of the femme fatale. The Faye Dunaway character who, she absolutely nails this performance. She absolutely nails every fucking performance that I've ever seen her in. But we also covered, wasn't it this show? We covered Network.
We did cover Network.
Yes. And so her performance is great. The femme fatale thing is once again subverted, right? Like she's a tragic character in a way that I think femme fatales in old Hollywood, old Hollywood obviously was very the patriarchy was very real there, and women were kind of just thrown around in these movies a lot of times. And of course, in this, we literally have
sometimes literally,
and in this movie too. But like, it's a really tragic moment rather than kind of being like almost not funny, but like Humphrey Bogart slapping someone around or slapping men and women, like that kind of thing. And you almost don't think about it. You're like, oh wow, everybody was getting slapped back then. We talked about that with Three Faces of Eve. Like you just walk in and like slap someone in the face, and it's like, I guess everyone could just get fucking slapped. But
anytime, anywhere. The Three Stooges helps way.
He finally roughs her up, and it's not a moment where you're like, this is something that should be happening. It's disturbing, right? Like it's not played for comedy or whatever. And that she delivers the line when she's like, and I've been quoting it all day, where she's like, she's my sister, she's my daughter, she's my sister, she's my daughter, she's my sister and my daughter. And that's a moment where in your mind you're like, oh fuck, that's an incest kid, like.
And that's where this turns from, as far as I'm concerned, a very good movie to a masterpiece, because you're like, because you knew that the John Ford character, obviously not the best guy, right? And obviously like up to some sort of skeevy nonsense, but at that moment, like it changes everything about like why they're keeping her at that house. You're like, oh, is she like evil? Is she like, you know, like what's this for? Is like an inheritance thing, yada yada, blah blah blah. And then you're like, oh wow, she's like risked it all to basically protect her well, her sister and her daughter from this sexual predator, right?
Yeah.
Which is nuts.
And the sexual predator who's still well respected within the community, right? Like still at his zenith of power, I would say, no pun intended. Like you know, his zenith of power. He's, you know,
head of the Chamber of Commerce, probably. You know, yeah.
And seemingly, I mean, it doesn't seem like when she says it's not rape, it's some kind of like grooming situation, right? Like it's you get groomed by your own fucking parent, and it's a truly tragic and disturbing thing. Which, you know, a lot of times, the femme fatale, I think, as a long-standing trope, you know, it's either self-interest, it's staying alive, it's you know, she's like that trope is always lying. You know what I mean? Like you always have to unravel it to get to the middle of it. I mean, Maltese Falcon in this movie, I think, are kind of sister daughter comedy.
Too soon
Because
well, always too soon.
But I mean, you know, that Bridget O'Shaughnessy, I was thinking about this when I was writing my thing, right, is lying the entire movie out of naked self-interest. She wants to be the one who ends up with the Maltese Falcon, and you have a very similar set of lines, I think, or almost feeling from you know, from Mrs. Mulville or Mulray, Mrs. Mulray. Throughout this entire
Evelyn
movie.
Cross Mulray, yeah.
And then, you know, when you really realize, like, no, she's protecting somebody. It's a tragic story. She was, you know, raped by her father. I mean, it is still rape, like whatever qualifications Roman Polanski wants to put in it. I mean, it's still, you know, it's statutory rape of your own child. And yeah, like it turns into this tragic story. It turns into, you know, her character is like, no, she's purely, I mean, maybe not purely good, but like working for pure interests. And I don't think that these, you know, the femme fatale ever is.
Yeah, well, yeah, because but the director name redacted can like shows you the entire like you don't know what her motivations are. You don't know why she's doing it. For the longest time, you're like, oh wow, like what is this woman up to? Like, and in the fact that there's as deep of a web of suspicion around her as anyone else is one of the reasons that this makes that this movie is so fantastic, because it's you can never like be sure of anything other than the fact that like this is jacked up.
Yeah. And yeah, so I think that those are the tropes that I really wanted to hit throughout this. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into a much more wide-ranging conversation in the coming in you know, in the after party, which is going to be on the Movie Night Extravaganza channel in about 10 minutes. But I wanted to hear from both of you guys. Is there a movie noir extravaganza title you're specifically excited for? And what do you hope to get out of this? This sounds like I'm making up like college questions. Like, what do you hope to get out of this semester? But what do you hope to get out of this survey, right? Like, we're kind of surveying through a wide-ranging genre, starting with the first era of noir, which kind of goes through the 40s and 50s, and then kind of segueing through like the 70s and 80s into the 2000s, which I think that the you know, neo-noir is very loosely applied to movies now for the most part. Like, now it's kind of just, it's a vibe. It's bisexual lighting of the day, you know, like.
Yeah, Andy, you want to go first? There's been plenty of me in this.
Yeah, I know. There's the one thing I'm really looking forward to get out of this in our survey is being able to really like analyze, you know, just another chance to analyze some of these, you know, for those visual motifs that I love so much, for that you know, the atmosphere, for the use of black and white, because I love black and white. I hate coloring my own work. You know I do it all the time for the you know, for my artwork, but like you saw the what I really want to do is just black and white stuff, because I just love doing that. So it's exciting to, you know, allowing my brain to kind of like think about the stuff that I love is like, you know, shapes and shadow and light and atmosphere, and how to bring all of that together and the way that these noir movies did, and how that inspired my heroes like Eisner, like Miller, and so on and so forth, like that. Jack Kirby, also very
There's
influenced by-
that direct pulp connection to a lot of early comic stuff and a lot of early illustrative work. By the way, I wanted to say that Jay Hutch, I did take a noir survey. It was called 90 Minutes to Die, which is a fucking badass name for a course, whatever. But like one of my favorite professors, Greg Bray, taught a 90-minute to die noir survey, which is kind of where we got the idea to do a month. I was like, well, I did take this class in college, and I ended up getting point stocked for writing. I think I wrote about Maltese Falcon, Double Indemnity, and I can't remember what other one I chose for papers, but I wrote one that was like 10 pages long, and he's like, I don't want to read all this. I'm going to dock some points for that. but I'm sure it's fine besides that.
That's why we're going to have him on this month, and he's going to read the paper to him. It's going to be great.
I asked him to come on, but I think he's busy. I think he just had his new wife just had a kid, and yeah.
Well, don't worry. We can get a guy from Devo and Sloan on, but we can't get your professor on. So, all right.
But so Conan, I'll ask you the same kind of question. What are you kind of hoping to get out of this semester of
out of the semester? Yeah. Look, I mean, Jay Hutch in the chat said I'm looking forward to Night of the Hunter and anything above a 90 in the
I sent Jay Hutch my essay, one of my essays when we talked about Maltese Falcon.
Which is great, but like my actual answer is Night of the Hunter, which we have this weird like absolutist Bolshevik democracy way that we chose these films, which I think no matter what we're gonna omit someone's favorite, and that's fine. But the kid stays in the picture was Night of the Hunter, and put simply, there's a lot of reasons I love that movie, but Robert Mitchum's character is one of the best villains of all time, and I'm very excited to get into that and talk about that. And I just think it's a fantastic film. It's, even though it's one that like I think every film aesthete and film nerd knows, but it's kind of not really as widely known outside that world. So I'm excited to discuss that, because especially when you put it in context of other films rather than as a standalone film that's just like obviously a masterwork for Mitchum and for cinematography and things along those lines, I think it'll sit very nicely. And I'm also glad that we're not worrying too much about what is noir versus neo-noir and this and that and the other. Oh my God. I can't stand any of those conversations. I just like want to exit the room immediately. But since we're going sequentially, we have stuff that's like more recent too. We have Brick, we have Under the Silver Lake. Like these are good. We're doing LA Confidential, which is, I'm like, I would have been bummed if we weren't doing LA Confidential. And there are ones we had to leave out, but here's the deal. We'll do them next year. Right. We'll do them next semester.
Another Robert Mitchum starring really amazing noir is Out of the Past. I remember watching that at one point.
Okay.
Oh, cool. It's a pretty good movie.
That's good. Just check it out. All right.
But so
everybody's that's excited about hearing about these films. We're doing it all month. Go subscribe to the Movie Noir Extravaganza YouTube. There's also a Twitch account as well. So if you prefer
twitch.tv/Movie Noir Extravaganza.
Correct. And Andy usually does these plugs, so I'm not as well versed on it, but we're also on all the various social medias, and sometimes we even use them. But yeah, Tuesdays and Fridays generally.
One thing I really need to plug is we do after parties a lot of times for episodes. And so we have a Patreon, patreon.com/Movie Night Extra. If you want to support us, there's a bunch of different levels, and we're really starting to plug out like a lot of content. We weren't for a while because we didn't have enough people, but we hit 20 patrons, which is a tiny number in general, but I feel good about that.
Show isn't even a year old though. Also, that's another thing. It's still a relatively newer show, but it is the best movie show on the internet. You heard it here, so
better than
take that what you will. A lot better actually. Love
up next
Movie
week on
Extravaganza.
Revolution, Chapo. But so we're gonna go over momentarily to an after party. It's on the Movie Night Extravaganza channel. We have Marina Dove joining us and Christina Oakes, and we're gonna keep talking about this movie. Jason's kind
of too bad we couldn't get the canceled Ravana.
Jason's kind of a strict manager and asked me to keep these down to an hour, or he says people get bored. No, but so I think I'm gonna leave it here. Thank you so much for
I get bored.
Thank you so much for being a part of it. Join us over there for the Chinatown after party. We'll be on in about 10 minutes.
Absolutely. And thanks.